Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, we'll talk with Variety's Gene Maddaus about the rapid growth of microdramas, a production activity in LA and other areas of the U.S. It's involving a whole lot of workaday actors, and SAG-AFTRA wants to have something to say about that. And then we'll hear from Variety's Elsa Keslassy from Paris as she digests the week that she just spent in rainy Century City covering the American film market. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. The alphabet soup of shuffles among major PR firms is not slowing down. RNC PMK is being absorbed by Michael Nyman's acceleration community of companies. Nyman has been assembling a portfolio of specialty PR, marketing, and branding firms since 2019. Now, some 77 RNC PMK alums will move to Nyman's ACC to form PMK Entertainment. RNC PMK leaders Cindy Berger and Alan Neerob will transition to the roles of CEO and president of PMK Entertainment, respectively. The jockeying for position around Warner Brothers Discovery continues as the soft deadline for early bids approaches later this week. Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, PIF, is seriously hovering around the deal, perhaps in partnership with Comcast. The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is meeting with Donald Trump in the White House as I record this. The message couldn't be much clearer, and we know MBS really wants to build out Saudi Arabia's media and entertainment infrastructure. Roblox is taking steps to toughen up its child safety procedures under increased pressure from marketers and the threat of regulation. The popular online gaming platform will launch facial age checks as a requirement for all users who want to access the communication features of the platform starting in December. Roblox has also implemented what it calls chats to limit communication between minors and adults. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in showbiz. Today we'll hear from Gene Maddaus, Variety's senior media reporter, on the macroeconomic issues around microdramas. Short-form content, vertical series, whatever you call them, they should not be dismissed as a flash in the pan. That's based on the volume of activity that Gene's reporting has uncovered. Gene Maddaus, thanks for joining me.
Happy to do it.
You are one of our best diggers on staff, and we have sent you out to really understand what is going on with microdramas, short-form content, verticals, whatever you call them. Everybody's talking about them. You wrote a terrific story for us that ran in the November 12th print edition of Variety and on Variety.com. You looked into the union issues and all of the business issues that are emerging around microdramas. My first takeaway from that is this is not something that's coming for the U.S. industry. This is here. You quote a number of U.S. actors that are making these ultra low budget, super short episode shows in the U.S. as we speak. Did it surprise you as you did your reporting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, this is not the kind of thing that I watch. And I think a lot of people who work in the industry also don't watch this stuff. But clearly somebody's watching it because it's definitely doing well and taking off and growing really fast. And it otherwise really sort of bleak period for the industry, it's really one of the few bright spots, one of the few things that's really growing. And they're being filmed in Los Angeles. Everybody's talked about production is fleeing Los Angeles. These are being shot in LA as we speak.
Can I ask just on the mechanics, are you getting casting breakdowns? Does this production go through the traditional process of casting, breakdowns, open calls, all of that? Or is there a micro network for microdramas?
If you go on the platforms, Actors Access, that kind of thing, that you could find casting calls for these kinds of things. The trick is, if you're in SAG-AFTRA, you cannot work on these. These are non-union projects. And so it's really a great opportunity for people who are not yet in the union, or maybe you haven't gotten enough work on union projects yet to actually be a fully fledged member. And if that's you, then you're eligible to work on these things. But if you're in the union, you're not allowed to work non-union. That's Global Rule 1 under SAG-AFTRA. So it's really been an interesting ecosystem that's grown up without any union activity at all.
And let me ask you this, if you log a number of hours or work credits on microdramas, that won't accrue to your SAG-AFTRA membership because these aren't union to begin with. From what you've reported, how do you think they're gonna deal with that right now? Both the producers of microdramas and the SAG-AFTRA union.
Well, what's interesting is if you're in SAG, or honestly, if you're in the WGA and you look around and like, where are the jobs at right now? This is a place where there are an increasing number of jobs, but you're not eligible to take them because you're in the union and they're non-union jobs. And so what some people are doing is either resigning from SAG-AFTRA, going FICOR, or just simply doing the job and not telling the union about it, right? Another option is you could do it under a fake name so that they can't find out about it. And that's stuff that apparently people are all doing because this is where the work is. And so that's obviously, if you're sitting in the position of SAG-AFTRA, that's not a healthy circumstance. If your members are hiding from you the fact that they're working. And so you want to figure out like, okay, if our members want to work in this space, is there a way for us to make that happen under union terms? And that's what SAG-AFTRA is trying to do.
It came out about a month ago. They were very early into coming out with a proposed, here's our proposed contract to work within this ultra low budget framework. But from what you heard from producers, what they're asking for is still a budget busting request for healthcare and the baseline protections that SAG-AFTRA has fought for almost 100 years to achieve. You can't blame the union for asking that. But again, at the budgets of $200,000, $300,000 per series that runs about 50 minutes but might be 25 2-minute episodes, producers are saying, we just can't do this. Or do you sense, is there room for compromise here? Do you think the union's going to take a hard line?
Potentially, I think the producers are very open to having this conversation, but there's some things about the model that they've created that resist unionization. I mean, a key one is just the amount of process and paperwork that going with a SAG production would require. And you can't wait around for SAG to approve your deal. In microdramas, like people find out about a project on Friday and they're shooting it on Tuesday. It's a real quick turnaround type thing, and that's a big concern. In terms of the cost, it's not that the daily rate that SAG is requiring would be that high. I mean, it's like $250 or something a day, which is not much money. It's more, I think they feel like, okay, we have some SAG actors, some non-SAG actors, and I'm paying pension and health for the SAG actors, but now I'm also paying pension and health for the non-SAG actors. And why is that? Because those people aren't actually going to qualify for healthcare under this project, and yet I'm still paying their pension and health contributions. Like, why am I doing that? For SAG, that's going to be a pretty hard line because, pension and health is pretty fundamental to what unions are all about.
Do you have any sense of the volume of production? I know it's hard to put a number on it, but your sense is that this is really ramping?
Yeah, I mean, there are studies that throw out numbers. I don't know how anyone could know for sure what the actual number is, but just anecdotally, people are certainly doing a lot of work in this space and hearing about a lot more work. And it's, if you cover this industry, everybody you talk to for the last 3 years has been talking about how there's no work. And this is the first conversation that I've had in any genre where people are talking about just there's so much work that we have to turn it down. So something's happening out there. So this is actually a growth business, and so it makes sense for SAG to try to get in on.
Is it your sense that a lot of this is happening in LA, in New York, in big production hubs, or it's diffused around the country?
LA, New York as well, but primarily LA. And it goes against that whole narrative that we've heard about jobs are fleeing LA and there's not enough tax incentives. Like, these are not incentivized projects. These are not getting tax rebates from the state of California. They're just super low budget projects. And part of the way they're super low budget is they're working non-union. There's a number of factors when we talk about the decline of production in Los Angeles, incentives in other places, overseas, et cetera. One of those factors is cost. And everybody talks about how costly it is to shoot in LA. Well, these folks have figured out how to do it for cheap. And so that's an interesting conversation to have. I mean, these are tiny, tiny budgets, right? Like $200,000 for what they would term like a feature film. So an 80 or 90-minute thing, they'll shoot for $200,000 and then they'll chop it up into 90-second segments and distribute that.
Did you get any sense from the companies that are producing these? Is there about the larger business model? Are these produced specifically to exist in these streaming apps in which some are subscription and some are supported by advertising, some both. But is there a larger play? Are ambitious producers saying, look, I'm going to make these 2-minute episodes, string them together to 50 minutes for an hour, but my goal is to sell a version of this show to NBC or to Bravo or to Apple TV?
The way the model works is it's super low cost, and then you can hopefully turn a profit through in-app purchases. And so you have your app, and if people want to see the next episode, they have to pay you $5 or whatever it is, or they can pay to see the whole rest of the show. And so it's a low cost, low revenue type model, and potentially down the line you could see if one of these titles becomes popular IP on its own, then it could become spun off in a number of different formats. But right now this is the format that people are focused on and trying to make this work.
Okay, Gene, so let me ask you now, this is a tough question. I know you watched several of these. I know that there's a bit of Perils of Pauline quality to it. You've got to end on a cliffhanger if you want to get that $1.99 or whatever you pay for your next episode. Did any of the titles that you perused, anything impress you?
I mean, it's interesting how they'll put extra production values into the pre-paywall scene. If you're going to spend money in microdramas anywhere, that is the place you want to spend it. The guy I talked to featured in the story, his name's Nick Ritacco, and he's done like 40 of these in 2 years, right? And he's a journeyman actor who started in New York and did guest spots here and there, and all of a sudden his career is just taking off. He plays the brooding, handsome lead in all these things who sweeps the ingenue off her feet. And it's a formula, obviously, but it's a formula that appears to be working.
Gene, thank you for putting your smarts into this area. And of course, there's other unions that have a stake in this, the writers, the directors, the crew. So this is certainly not the last that we will be talking about an evolving business model for microdramas, at least in the U.S.
Yep, thank you.
And now we'll hear from our one and only international editor, Elsa Keslassy in Paris. She spent the past week in the bowels of the Century Plaza Hotel covering the American film market. That is the annual bazaar of films of all kinds, from slasher picks to costume dramas. Elsa and Variety's London bureau chief, Alex Rittman, covered the heck out of that market. I recorded a segment with her thoughts on the big themes of AFM on Saturday while she was waiting at LAX to hop a flight back to Paris. I love some ambient noise on this podcast that demonstrates how reporters really operate in the world, but even for me, the sound quality was too rough. So after Elsa reacquainted herself with her son and her apartment, she hopped on a video call with me to talk about all that she learned and took away from her week. Elsa Keslassy, back in Paris. What were you thinking about on the plane as you flew home to Paris after a week at AFM? The independent film sector is struggling. AFM always is a really interesting bellwether of where the market is.
Of course, genre and animation are always very popular at the AFM. There were also prestige packages being sold, and these included Bad Bridget, the revenge thriller set in the 19th century from the filmmaker of Kneecap and starring Daisy Edgar Jones and Emilia Jones, sold by Film Nation and WME Independent, and there was a lot of buzz about it. The problem with that package is that it's really expensive from what buyers were talking about. I heard roughly 10 million for the US and 20 million for international. That's what the asking prices are, and it's really prohibitive for most buyers right now because the box office isn't great and it's really a tough market. So it's difficult for independent distributors or even bigger ones to carve out that much money to buy a project. Lionsgate was selling Mel Gibson's 2-part feature, The Resurrection of the Christ, which drew some interest.
And you had a great scoop about a new project from Mark Ruffalo?
Yes, it's a French company, Playtime, that launched sales, and it's an independent project from a French author, Bertrand Bonello, who is best known for directing Saint Laurent, the biopic of the French designer, and he's going to make his next movie in which Mark Ruffalo is going to play an investigator at the Vatican. Biggest news that broke during the AFM was not really AFM related, but it was Lucky Chap launching an international division and partnering up with Media One to have a London office. and a London production company. That was a big news and big trends going on of American companies setting offices and production companies in Europe.
You said the attendance was really strong. Was it mostly sellers, mostly buyers? What was the mix of people?
There were 285 exhibitors from 35 countries, and that's on par with last year. And buyers were also out in force. The US was the biggest contingent of buyers, but you also had a lot of people from South Korea, Germany, the UK, France, and Italy. These were the strongest representation. But the Fairmont also had a cute little French restaurant inside that was called the Lumiere restaurant. I was like, wow, the French are everywhere.
They are being right across the street from CAA. They know what market they are serving. So the Lumiere makes sense. But let me ask you, Elsa, how was the food?
The food was pretty good, actually. I give my French stamp to the food at the Fairmont.
A French woman would not lie. Elsa, as always, thank you for working hard.
My pleasure, and I hope next year the sunshine will be there to make it even more enjoyable.
I'm going to send you a bottle of vitamin D to make up for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Here comes Hitmakers, Variety's annual celebration of the music industry insiders behind the biggest songs of the year. Our big brunch bash will be held December 6th in Los Angeles. This year's special honorees include Tate McRae, the Marias, Buddy Guy, Alex Warren, and of course, K-pop Demon Hunters. HBO will unveil It's Never Over on December 4th. The documentary chronicles the rise and tragic early death of musician Jeff Buckley. It's part of HBO's Music Box docuseries. It looks to be thoroughly researched. This is some good news. Hollywood's beloved Cinerama Dome is one step closer to becoming a movie palace again. On Monday night, the Central Hollywood Neighborhood Council offered a unanimous vote of support for the ArcLight Hollywood and Cinerama Dome's conditional use permit to serve alcoholic beverages. Before we go, congrats to Dave Binniger and Kristen Kurowski. They've both joined Michael Ellenberg's Media Res production banner as senior VPs. Binniger will work on scripted development. Kurowski is in business and legal affairs. Binniger was most recently at Jax Media. Kurowski was with MRC. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Gene Maddaus and Elsa Keslassy. Listen to the very end here after the sign-off for an example of Elsa's dedication to her job. It's a snippet from our first recording at the airport. Sticks, Nicks, Hick, Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.
There were some deals, as I mentioned, on animated films and short films. As long as they're not too pricey. Sorry. Sorry, I have to enter. I have to enter the plane.
Oh, Elsa,
But yeah.
Elsa, I'm going to let you go.